Hello, welcome back to APUSH Chapter 7. This is Part 3, and we are starting at Parliament passes the Intolerable Acts. Now, we ended off with the Boston Tea Party. Now, as a result of the Boston Tea Party, Parliament decided to punish Boston, and they created the Boston Port Act. Now, this act closed down the Boston Harbor until they paid everything in damage and paid it off. So they were not allowed to export anything, which kind of stinks because that's where they made most of their money from. Now, what does the new Quartering Act say? The old Quartering Act wasn't enough, so they decided to up a notch, and it made the colonists take the soldiers into their houses, not just a lodge or not just a hotel type thing, but now they have to go into their houses. What accompanied the Quartering Act? Well, the Intolerable Acts. Well, this Quartering Act was part of the Intolerable Acts, and the Intolerable Acts came alongside another act. This act had nothing to do with them. It was nothing to punish Boston. It just happened to come out at the same time. This was the Quebec Act. Now, the Quebec Act, it was pretty much straightforward. Let's help keep Quebec how it was when the French had it. Let's not change it. Let's leave it alone. Let's just expand it a little bit so they have some more room. It was a good law, but it was put into bad company. As in, like, right now at the time that they made it was horrible. Like, no, I couldn't have done that. So the colonists kind of got mad. They thought they were imposing onto them that they now had to be Catholics and all of that. It was nothing. These colonists are just a bunch of drama queens, and they need to relax and take a chill pill. But something was summoned something was created because of these acts, and that was the Continental Congress Part 2, because we already had the first one, and this second Continental Congress was held in Philadelphia. Now, everybody attended this one. Everybody except Georgia. I'm sorry, Georgia just didn't want to go, I guess. But everybody attended this Congress except for Georgia, and these 5 very, very accepted and well-liked leaders also were there. And these 5 leaders is important, especially when the book lists things. It's very important. Keep in mind that some teachers will take listings or something that says the most important or the worst or happens because of. Any of those are keywords. So the 5 people that are important leaders are Samuel Adams, John Adams, George Washington, and Patrick Henry. The Declaration of Rights was created here. Now, it didn't seem like a big deal, kind of random. This is the only time it's mentioned, but it was created here at the Second Continental Congress. It also was created alongside with some appeals to the British and the colonists. Now, when the British Parliament got this Declaration of Rights, no way were they going to take that in. They did not want it at all. Now, they kind of laughed. They're like, that's not going to happen. So, the most important thing that came from this was the association. The association was boycotting British goods, and they did not allow importing or exporting or trading or buying or selling of British goods. Nothing whatsoever. They had to be made in the colonies, they had to be grown in the colonies, nothing whatsoever from British. Nothing. Now, we're going now to the, we already went through the bloodshed, and, oh no, we haven't. We're going through there now. We are in the bloodshed, the section that's labeled bloodshed, we're there. Now, Lexington and Concord. Now, the colonists had a militia, and they were collecting weapons, just in case. They weren't really preparing to fight the British. They just had those weapons because of Indians. Not because of British, because of Indians. But when the British heard that they had weapons, they wanted to take them away. So they went to Lexington, and they were going there to seize the weapons. Now, the militia, the Minutemen, they heard about this, and they did not want that to happen. So they lined up, and they were going to fight. Now, they had never done this before. They were only trained to fight Indians, and that never happened. So they weren't really expecting to fight. But they were destroyed. The British creamed them, and 8 of them were killed on the spot, and many more died later on because of wounds. Now, this is where the shot that you heard around the world, that's in Lexington, not Concord, Lexington. Now, there was another quote that's on 134 under bloodshed. It says, "By the rude bridge that arched the flood, their flag to April's breeze unfurled. Here once the embattled farmer stood and fired the shot heard around the world." Now, that was at Lexington. And it sounds like a poem, which it is a poem, and it was written by Emerson. Robert Waldo Emerson wrote that poem. It might be important because, shot heard around the world sounds pretty cool too, but yeah. Now, who did the British send to the colonies to kill any rebellion? The Hessians. Hessians, I say Hessians. The Hessians were Germans. They were the ones that they sent to foreign lands. But see, this is where it starts getting to be a war. Although it started back there in the Acts, the Stamp Act, this is where the fighting really starts. The British were treating the colonies as if they had nothing to do with them, like they were just trying to take over the land. And the Hessians were used to kill off the native people. So this is kind of showing that the British were now treating them as if they were nothing to them. We are now at the imperial strength and weaknesses. Now, the British boasted that this would be an easy win, that they were experienced sheep herds, so they could win anything. But they just didn't realize that the colonies had one very nice friend helping them out, who wanted some very sweet revenge. And those are the French. The French, or the Frenchies. They wanted so bad to get revenge to the English that they helped the colonists win. And this is a very important part, because, without the French, we would have not won. So, it's kind of important that we have. Now, it kind of switches over to Europe, and it talks about the Whigs again. And it says, who did the Whigs oppose? They opposed the Tories. So, the Whigs did not like the Tories. The Tories were for the king, and the Whigs were for the colonies. So, what wise trade did the colonies do? Like, they traded, it's not literal. It's kind of like just a little saying. They traded space for time. Benjamin Franklin did a calculation there, and by the time 150 patriots were killed in war, 60,000 American babies were born. That's how big the colonies were. And this was a great disadvantage to England, because if if it would have been smaller, then maybe they would have been able to control them. But no, there was so many people. But that by the time just 150 were killed, 60,000 were born. So that's a big group. Like that's huge. So now there was some advantages that the colonists did have. They were playing on home field, which was one of them. Now this is a listing. This is important. They had the home field advantage. They had the time and the distance, and they had great leaders. Although George Washington might have not been like the greatest victory winner, he was a leader because he knew when it was time to surrender and not lose his men at war. So who was appointed? The military leader was George Washington, and Benjamin Franklin was the master of the diplomat. Sounds important, you should know it. My teacher has mentioned it in class. I think you should at least know that he's a master diplomat. Shouldn't kill yourself trying to memorize that. But there was a guy who came from France, and his name was Marquis de Lafayette. Very fancy little name, but he was a French nobleman who was 19 years old and became a general in the army. Pretty simple. Now, what was created toward the end of the war? This is a very, 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 very special piece of document. We are now under American pluses and minuses. Actually, yeah, American pluses and minuses. This very important document is called the Articles of Confederation. If you haven't heard that before, I don't know what you're doing in this class, honestly. But the Articles of Confederation is just a very important piece of document for our country. And I'm gonna finish at the thin line of heroes, which I think is, I have one more point maybe. Oh yeah, I have like one or two more points. Money was scarce. There wasn't a lot of money in colonies, at least not like hard cold money like coins. So they decided to create thousands upon thousands of continental paper money, which is where we get the not worth a continental saying. It's a very cheap piece of paper that's worthless, really, worth maybe less than a cent. So worthless that a barber that created his barber shop with a whole bunch of continentals. That's how cheap it is. So yeah, I'm gonna finish there, and I'm gonna do the last and final one. I know I'm like 2 sections off, but it's gonna be really short. Maybe go over some missed details or anything. But I'm running out of time, so I will finish off with part 4, the final one. I'm sorry that it was such a long chapter 7 review, but I just wanted to make sure, because there's not very many detailed reviews online. So I hope that you have a great time studying, and see you next video.